Folks, welcome to our webinar on how to have fewer meetings in 2023. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce you to the team that you have here today. My name is Adrian. I'll be your host for the next 60 or so minutes. We're also going to hear from Anna, who is our user researcher and has done a lot of work in the last few months specifically on this topic. And then also we have Andrew with us, who is going to be taking us through some best practices and then a demo or two, really hands-on, so that you can easily apply what you learned today. A few housekeeping rules before we start. We'll be sending out a recording of the session, the slide deck, and some additional resources after this webinar. So there's no need to take notes. We're going to send out some links to some step-by-step guides on some Slido basics as well. Instead, we'd love for you to participate in our session as much as possible. You can ask your questions in our Slido Q&A, and we'll also activate polls, just like we had before we got started, throughout our session, where we'll ask for your insights, your opinions, and your ideas. And to participate, it's as easy as just using the Slido panel to the right of your webinar window here. If you don't see it, there's an apps button, again, on the bottom right with, looks like 3 little squares and a plus sign. You can click that and activate the Slido panel for the active session. Or you can scan this QR code with your mobile device, or finally go to slido.com and enter the event code, fewer meetings. Cool. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, I'd love to know what motivated you to sign up for this webinar. What are you hoping to learn today? This will give our team a better idea of what your expectations are, and we can tailor the content a little bit to include what you're looking to learn. Like I mentioned, we're not going to be focusing on Slido basics and how to do kind of basic things in Slido today in this webinar, but we will send out some resources, some really great resources and step-by-step guides after this. So I'll give everyone about a minute to get your answers in, and we can see we got a handful of folks typing.
How to tell my boss to have less meetings. That's a nice one.
Right. Ivan Orozco. Yeah, I agree with that. How to have...
It might give you some compelling arguments, which might help convince your boss.
Okay, como manejar varias reuniones. We got some Spanish. Very cool. How to manage several meetings. So that's gonna be cool. Fewer meetings. How to integrate better. Yeah, let's scroll down a little bit. Refresh my knowledge on Slido. You will get a little bit of a demo, and again, for some Slido basic, we'll be sending out some resources. But today we'll be focusing on definitely on the fewer meetings. Part of it, how to work more efficiently. Cool. Awesome. Well, that's great. Thanks so much, everyone, for your ideas in the poll. We're actually going to cover most of these points in the following 3 parts. So I want to go over the agenda for today. The first part of the webinar today is the real reason that you have too many meetings. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and Anna will take us through that. Then we will talk a little bit about replacing meetings, specifically with asynchronous video, some tips, some tools to replace some of those meetings with some asynchronous video. Our third agenda item, how can you collect input from your team asynchronously using Slido? And then finally, we'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes to answer your questions in our Q&A. So feel free in that Slido panel here in the webinar to kind of click over to the Q&A tab, ask your questions throughout the webinar, or upvote some of the questions that you want to hear us answer here live, so that we know that they're the most pressing. So let's jump right in. Cool. Shopify did the unthinkable. You may have seen this news that came out at the beginning of the year in January, that Shopify announced they would cancel all recurring meetings with more than 3 participants. They also introduced a meeting-free Wednesday, right? And established that company meetings would only be held on Thursdays. And the results were kind of wild. They tested this for a 2-week period, and over the 2 weeks, they saved, quote unquote, about 76,000 hours of meetings. That's a jaw-dropping number, right? Could you imagine? How would you feel about this? Is it a dream come true, or simply a sign that the meeting culture, right, is terribly broken? So I want to go over a quote that I really like. It's a quote from James Cook, who's the digital editor at Business Leader magazine. And they say that the problem for many businesses is that meetings have become a knee-jerk response to every task, every project, and every problem, almost like a busy work for the sake of busy work. He called it a busy fool syndrome. But is that what research tells us too? For that, I'd like to invite Anna to the virtual stage to explain what our research is showing us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adrian, for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Anna Vincenti. I'm currently based in London, by the way. I love that this webinar has everyone dispersed across the globe. That is the beauty of virtual work. And I have been doing way too much research on hybrid work trends to make sense of it all so that you don't have to. So that's what I'm hoping to share with you today. But before we get into the specifics of how meetings are broken, let's first get some context around the general state of our calendars today, and I'm sure you're going to resonate. So it wouldn't be a good presentation if I didn't start with a very impressive statistic. So here we go. In a study done by Microsoft, looking at meeting data from Outlook, the calendar that a lot of us I'm sure use, over 2 years, they found that there was a 153% increase in weekly time spent in meeting. So that was a period of February 2020 to February 2022. And that came out to an average time of 18 hours per week spent in meetings. If you work a 40-hour work week, that is basically half of your time spent at work in meetings. I think we can all agree, probably from experience, that this is not a sustainable or effective way to be getting our work done. Right? Do you agree? Do you agree? I know I do. So why is this still happening if we know this is not working for us? And the research has shown us 4 primary reasons. For one, during COVID, meetings replaced all of our in-person interactions. And now, for those of us that are still completely remote or at least heavily hybrid, meetings are replacing the majority of our in-person interactions, right? If you take away a method of communication, you have to put one back in. And the one that we can most easily think of that best replicates an in-person meeting is a virtual one, right? Also, many companies are now distributed and have many distributed teams. During COVID, one of the cool things about it is we realized that we had access to pools of talent that maybe weren't in our direct regions. What that means, though, is that we've got teams across time zones. I know that it is not the same hour for Adrian as it is for me, and you have to meet with your team across the time zone, regardless of how dispersed you are. One of the third reasons is that, the only third reasons, but one of the reasons is that there's been an increase in multitasking because of the remote setup. Don't lie to me. I know that you have more than one tab open right now, and you're probably looking at it. I don't blame you. I do it myself. If I was ever, in person having a meeting in the office before COVID, I would not dare look at my phone, look at another browser tab, because everyone would know what I was doing. But now we're all multitasking. So what happens? We miss information. How do we get that information back? We schedule another meeting about the same information that we missed the first time. And the fourth and final reason, there are plenty more, but these are kind of the 4 top reasons, is that meetings, as far as we know it, virtual ones, are the most personable form of communication that we have, right? At the end of the day, we are human. We are social animals. We rely on, the smiles, the eye contact, or whatever version of eye contact this is, to understand and communicate with people. And if we can't do it in person, we have to find another way to do it. And meetings, let's face it, are pretty easy to schedule. So we're having way too many meetings, right? What does that result in? So in a study that we actually did here at Slido in December of 2022, so just a few months ago, we found that 57% of employees that attend or organize meetings say that they often don't have enough time to think or do things because of the number of meetings they get invited to, which makes sense, right? We spent 50% of our working hours in meetings. So not only is that a large percentage of people that don't have enough time to do their work, they also definitely don't have enough time to think about preparing their meetings effectively, right? So how are you supposed to have an effective meeting if you're not thinking about how to prepare it? Meetings should be more than just about gathering people at the same place and time. You have to think about, what input or feedback or decision, what contributions do you need? Who do you need them from? What is the best way or method or strategy to reach the goal that you have for that meeting? Is that something that you all are thinking about when you're scheduling your meetings? I know a lot of you are probably thinking no, because you don't have the time, and that's okay. It's also a skill that needs to be learned, and hopefully we'll share some of that with you today. But since we're not thinking about these things, what's happening is that meetings are, not only are we having too many, they are inefficient. a separate study that we ran about synchronous and asynchronous meetings at Slido just in January last month. One of our respondents in our study said that about 50% of the scheduled meetings I have could have either been consolidated with another one or could have been an email. I know you've all seen the meme, and it's could have been an email. Not only could it have been an email, it could have probably been many other things as well. Potentially a Slack message, potentially an asynchronous video. And we'll share some other methods that might be helpful to be replacing your meetings. But for now, meetings remain ineffective, and that leads us to some really important costs. So what are the costs of having inefficient meetings? First and foremost, wasted time, and wasted time is wasted money. If you think about, what your salary makes out itself to be per hour, if you're spending 20 hours per week in meetings, how many dollars is that for just one person being in a meeting? Multiply that by all the people that get invited. I know that you have plenty of meetings on your calendar that you are not necessary to be in, but you'll probably go because of headcount or whatever, right? And the second reason why meetings are inefficient is because it causes burnout. I'm sure you've all heard of burnout. You've also probably heard of Zoom fatigue. If you don't know what Zoom fatigue is, it's essentially this virtual version of burnout, or virtual burning of your retinas, because you're spending way too many hours looking at your screen in your meetings and not actually getting your work done. That leads to ineffective employees, unhappy employees, probably a poor team culture as well. And that's not the kind of culture we want to be fostering in our meetings, right? I'll end this little what's at risk section with a fun meme. It's 2023. We're allowed to use memes in presentations now, that we found on LinkedIn. It was someone simulating the cost of having a meeting by calculating how much people get paid per hour. So in this 4-person meeting that would last an hour, it would cost you $603.25. So you may want to consider sending an email or having an alternative solution instead. Just thought that would be fun to share. So now that I've spent enough time on my soapbox telling you about why we shouldn't be having too many meetings, I'll share with you what we should start doing instead, which is, I'm sure you guessed it, having fewer meetings. We need to have fewer meetings, and I would not recommend pulling a Shopify and canceling all of your meetings at once. But a few studies, including one being done at the University of Reading, show some really compelling benefits. So this study found that 1 meeting free day per week improved productivity by 35%. There were some other benefits as well. And before I tell you what they are, I'm going to make you do a little bit of work to make sure you're not multitasking, okay? So I want to ask you, how high was the increase in job satisfaction with 1 meeting free day per week? All right. I see 25 people have responded. Thank you so much. We'll give it another couple of seconds. Awesome. Don't worry, we'll reveal the correct answer. I won't leave you hanging. And as you can see, no more participants voting. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and reveal the answer. Wow. Okay. I'm very impressed. It looks like a lot of you are very hopeful about the benefits of 1 meeting free day per week, or you've been reading up on your hybrid work literature. And to that, I commend you. But yeah, that's correct. There was a 48% increase in job satisfaction. Are you kidding me? Almost a 50% increase in job satisfaction. That is undeniably beneficial. But that's not all. There was also a decrease of stress levels by 26%. I don't know about you all, but sign me up, please, and thank you. So now that I've shared with you, the current state of the bad meetings and the over scheduling of meetings that we're having, and what's at risk, I've also shared with you the inevitable and undeniable benefits of reducing those number of meetings. It seems like a no-brainer, right? Like, I think you all agree we should be having fewer meetings, but why haven't we done that yet? I'm sure you're all still finding yourself in this vicious cycle, right? We haven't done this yet, first and foremost, because change is hard. I don't know if you all have been here over the course of the last 3 years. I'm sure you have. It was not easy. We have undergone a lot of change. We went from a pandemic and a lockdown to like an out of lockdown and back into lockdown, and always adapting to these new norms of working, these new technologies. It's exhausting. And when you finally get to a place of status quo where things feel a little bit more normal, even if they're not great, we don't want to change again. And another reason why we aren't changing things, which is another thing that makes change hard, is that we lack the skills. Change requires us to acquire skills and mindsets, which takes time and effort. And oftentimes you have to start from scratch. You might not know where to start. That's overwhelming. It's too much on everybody's plate and we just don't want to do it. So hopefully throughout the rest of this presentation, my colleague Andrew is going to share with you some very simple and practical ways to overcome point number 2, right? And even point number 1 will make change less hard because we'll share with you how to start trimming unnecessary meetings, how do you replace them with the right tools and technology, and how can you run the meetings that you will keep, because you should not be getting rid of all of them. How do you keep those meetings running more effectively? So thank you all so much for having me. And with that, Andrew, what do you got for us? Please help.
Thanks, Anna. Happy to help. So many useful insights there to digest. And let's move on to our next section, where we're going to look at how we can actually have fewer meetings in practice. So here I want to show you how you can replace at least some of your meetings with asynchronous video. And we've chosen to focus on this video communication because we believe it's the best replacement for meetings. You still have that personal touch when you're sending a recording of yourself speaking rather than just a written message. So as we begin, let's actually look at the difference between synchronous and asynchronous meetings. Maybe you're not familiar with these terms at all, and that's okay. We'll explain what we mean, and I am going to be using these words a lot over the next 5 minutes or so it's good to know. So first, looking at synchronous meetings. These are the ones that happen with every participant present at the same time. In person, in the office, or maybe remote on a video call, or maybe it's both of those things combined in the hybrid setup. It's real-time communication that we're having with the team, the kind of meetings we're probably used to. Then we have our asynchronous meetings, and these are usually unscheduled and not in person. That's the big difference here. Because of that, team members can actually attend the meeting on their own time, and it's becoming a lot more popular because teams are more distributed, working remotely all around the world in different time zones. So we may have an idea in our heads as what we kind of think it looks like to work asynchronously. And initially it might just seem we have no meetings at all, just throw them in the bin. But actually, what it looks like is having fewer better meetings. It's not a good idea to cancel all of them because to maintain company culture, especially if you've got a lot of remote workers, it's still important to have meetings. And we're going to show you which meetings we recommend that you keep and which you can do asynchronously in just a little minute. And also, when you're replacing those unnecessary meetings, there are alternatives you can use. As we've mentioned, video tools, using polls and Q&A, Slido, ever heard of that? Productivity apps and group chats with your team. So let's have a look at the meetings that do work well asynchronously. First up, company updates and announcements. Now, Monday morning meetings we have at Slido, and we used to do those as a meeting, and everyone would join. For me, it was 7:30 a.m. in the morning. In the last year, we've started to do those as video updates, and I couldn't be happier because I'm grateful to not have to join on a Monday morning so early. That's not my favorite way to start the week. Then in terms of project discussions, if you're just giving some feedback or planning, you can definitely do that asynchronously. There's no need to meet up in order to get that done. And learning and development, so people can look at a training on a video or maybe an e-document and learn at their own pace. Generally, all meetings that don't require an immediate response of any kind are ideal for async. Then we'll look at the meetings that don't work well asynchronously. So if it's a team building, such as a social call, you obviously want people to be there and interact, so that's not ideal. Brainstorming, when you want to get together and plan a project, it's best to be face-to-face, whether that's on a call or in the room together. And of course, your one-on-ones. So if there's an urgent discussion to be had or you're having a performance review with your colleague, you'll want to do that synchronously together at the same time. And our rule of thumb here is that all meetings that have human connection as a main goal are not ideal for async. So we've seen that it's not productive to cancel every single one of our meetings, and we actually have 5 factors that can help us to determine when to go asynchronous, so to speak. First of all is scheduling. Maybe your meeting participants are scattered across different time zones in the world. Then with interaction, maybe it's not necessary for people to come together and chat and exchange ideas. Looking at connection. Does your meeting require real-time interaction? Maybe not. In terms of sensitivity, is your meeting content publicly shareable? There's nothing too private in there. And finally, looking at urgency. So if there's no immediate response required. So if you kind of check all these points, then thumbs up for you. Good job. You can go asynchronous. Author and professor Adam Grant puts it very well here when they say there are 4 reasons to meet: to decide, learn, bond, and do. If it doesn't serve one of those purposes, cancel it. So there you go. And we kick it back to you with a poll asking, looking at your own calendar, what percentage of your meetings do you think could be replaced? Maybe this concept is totally new to you. So have a think. Look at your calendar, either on your computer screen or in your mind, and let us know. Feel like at Slido we've been doing this with some of us.
It's really interesting, Andrew, because I feel like I was also surprised by the number of meetings that at first we were going, to async, and it was more than I originally thought. So I think I undershot it originally in my head, but it'll be interesting to see what 44, 45 folks so far are thinking. A couple more typing.
Let's see. Yeah, a lot of votes coming in, actually. There's no correct answer for this one, so don't worry. You can't mess it up. You're not going to get it wrong. So we have over 50 votes. So let's have a look-see here and see what people think. Okay. We got only 10% coming in strong. So you could replace 10% of your meetings. Some people think 25% coming in next. And yeah, over 50%. That's maybe a bit of a stretch. You still want to feel like you're working in a company with your employees and have that connection. All right, perfect. So thanks everyone for your insights. And it seems that from the research that we've done, a lot of meeting organizers actually think that up to 20% of their meetings could be replaced with a video message or presentation. So there you go. So how do we actually replace meetings with video communication? One of the tools that we use is Vidcast, and it's very easy to use. It lets you record, edit, and share short videos of you speaking, and you can send them to your team. So you might be familiar with this, or you might know Loom or VideoAsk, and they're all similar tools. So to get us started, let's actually watch a vidcast that one of our customers has recorded for us. This is Jonathan from Broadridge Financial Solutions. He created this video to share how his company are successfully using Vidcast and Slido already. So let me bring that up and you can see what Vidcast actually looks like for the people that are accessing it. So this is our view. We can see the video is right here and the transcript of the audio is on this side. We can make a comment. As you can see, our lovely colleague Carly has already done so. And you can even put a little emoji reaction on the timestamps. So I'm going to turn on the closed captions here. We'll put this video on full screen and we'll see what Jonathan has to say.
Hi, this is Jonathan Belfiore, one of the Unified Communications Engineers at Broadridge Financial Solutions. Over the last year, one of our key challenges has been driving inclusion, not just for our knowledge workers, but our workers that also may not have a Broadridge issued laptop or device. This is where Vidcast and Slido have become a cornerstone of that strategy to tackle that issue for us. So not only have our associates been using Vidcast for internal how-tos, sharing webinars internally, or using Slido to keep everybody engaged on internal all-hands meetings, but our associate networks are finding more creative ways to stay engaged with all associates. Great examples of this are our human resources and medical departments that are actually recording Vidcasts, taking WebEx webinars, importing them into a vidcast, or recording a video, or even uploading a doctored video, creating vidcasts of them, and actually posting QR codes that link to those vidcasts all over our warehouses and buildings. So that way, sure, they can communicate that over email, but not every associate has a broader Gmail address. So any associate working in one of our warehouses can take their personal smartphone, scan the QR code, and they're right in the conversation, either participating in that Slido or viewing those vidcasts so they can stay in the conversation. Next month, our Multicultural Associate Network is going to be using vidcast to empower our associates to tell their own stories as part of the events being held for International Women's Day and Women's History Month. It's events like these that enable Broadridge to become a more inclusive place to work. It's through these use cases where vidcast and Slido really provide their value to Broadridge. By enabling us to drive a more inclusive workplace culture, it makes Broadridge a more welcoming place for everybody to work.
Perfect. Thank you, Jonathan, for sharing so well with us how you use vidcast in a great asynchronous fashion. So I'm going to show you how you can actually do this yourself and create a vidcast. So this is my vidcast home screen where I'm on my videos. I can see, it's not my first rodeo here. I've made lots of different videos with vidcast, and we're going to show you how you can do this yourself. So to get started, we can click on New Video on the top right-hand corner. So it's going to load up, and I'll have my options to make sure that my audio is set up and my video. Here's another version of me in this little rectangle, and I'm going to make sure that I'm using my correct mic. So I can change my input source here. I'm using the right mic. That's perfect. Now, of course, I can just share it like this and record a video of me speaking like Jonathan did, but vidcast also gives you the option to share your screen. So let's see how we can do that. This is the screen sharing button here. You click on that, and we have the option to share our entire screen, a certain window, or in this case, I'm going to share a browser tab. So I'm going to make a little video to replace a normal Wednesday stand-up meeting that my team would have. So I click on this one. I've prepared the slides, and I'm going to hit share, and it brings us over there. So what I'll do is go back to my vidcast tab and start recording. And this is going to give me a little 3-second timer, and then the video will begin. So here we go. Hi team, this is just a little replacement video for our normal Wednesday stand-up meeting. You can see here are the key updates for this week. Take a screenshot of this if you need, and if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks so much. So we can easily navigate back and forth to the vidcast app tab and also our slides. And the video is created, so we can see it here. I can play it back. Hi team, this is just a little replacement video for our normal. It's working well. Don't I sound great? You can try again if you want to redo the video, but I'm happy, so I'm going to click on yes. So the video will save, and I can make this discoverable and searchable by anyone in my organization, or because I'm just going to share this with my team, I'll click share by link only and finish. And here we go. Now it's looking a bit more similar to what we saw with Jonathan's video. I can send this link to anyone on the team. And just a final thing here, I can edit the video by clicking on this button. And I'll just show you a couple of things. So I can give it a title. Let's go for Wednesday Stand-Up. I can add a description or even chapters divided by timestamps. We're going to save that. And if you need to trim the video and make it a little shorter, you can do that here, or even edit the audio transcript. But I'm happy with that, and I hope you are too. That's how you can use vidcast. And yeah, over to you, Adrian, to kick us off.
Yeah, I put it in the chat, but I love the ability that you can play it back at you can change the playback speed of a vidcast too, and by default, I don't know if anyone caught it there, the default is it plays it back at 1.2 x speed, which doesn't change or distort the voice too much, and it's already kind of saving you a couple of minutes there. But I'd love to hear what benefits do you see or potential benefits do you see of maybe using video updates instead of live meetings, especially when your participants don't necessarily need to add any insights? Could this be a way that you see to more efficiently send out some updates, some standouts? So I'd love to hear what people
snap on those too, saving time.
Yeah, we got about 9 participants type. I love that too, that it tells us right there how many people are typing, so I don't cut anyone off. We've got people there, people watching. when they have time. That's a good one. People watching when they have time. Challenge is to ensure that they actually watch it. That's a really, really good call. From a when they have time standpoint, or when they're most productive. I know that some of my colleagues love working in the afternoon. Some of my colleagues say if I don't get everything done that I have to between 8 and noon, like the day's wasted. So love that efficiency, flexibility to watch. Thank you, Jennifer. They can watch on their own time. Yeah, we got a couple more. Great
Great
one, double
when double
booked.
booked. Yeah, no more
Yes.
meeting clashes in your calendar. Love that.
Love, love, love that.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah, so from the answers we saw rolling in, you can see a good overview of the benefits we've mentioned and a couple of new ones like that double book one that are worth noting. But the outcome is definitely twofold, right? Some benefits for sure are freeing up your employees' time to focus on some important tasks, right? Allowing them periods of deep work and improving efficiency. However, there can also be some drawbacks of replacing meetings completely. And even Shopify, the example that we used at the beginning of the webinar, they saw those downsides. And in fact, spoiler alert, they did end up bringing back most of their meetings. So some of those drawbacks, right, for purely remote workers, not having that time, that interaction or that engagement that comes with a meeting can be a bit of a detriment. And it's still important to have certain meetings to maintain company culture, especially if you have a lot of remote or dispersed workers. And finally, canceling meetings can be a disruption in and of itself, right? If you see something on your calendar and then you all of a sudden don't, which can cause some uncertainty and stress. So we want to make sure that you're still keeping the right meetings. And one of the ways that you can actually increase interaction and let everyone have their voice be heard is by using Slido. Even if it's an asynchronous meeting, Slido is going to be a great way to do that. And Andrew is going to walk us through a couple of really helpful use cases here. So, Andrew.
Cool. Right on. Thank you, Adrian. So you've already heard from Jonathan and how he's using Slido within his organization. And that's not all. We also have a success story from one of our customers, Mathilde from Glovo, who says you can use Slido and wherever you're sitting in the world, you can actually take part in the discussion. And I couldn't agree more. This is the way that Slido optimizes things and lets everyone have a say. So for this demo, we're going to show you with Slido and Vidcast how you can have a continuous open Q&A with your team and collect feedback. So we're going to have another hands-on demo here. I'm going to show you my Slido screen. Hopefully most of you are familiar enough with Slido. If you do need some more basic facts, we will send you some resources on that. But for now, I'm going to show you how you can do this. So let's start here and create our Slido. So I'm going to give it a name. We'll just call it Open Q&A. And I want this to be running continuously. So we will set our end date for a few months down the line and create our Slido. So here we are. And because we're going to actually combine Slido and Vidcast, there's a way in which we can embed a Vidcast video into Slido. And I'm going to show you how you can do that first and foremost. So let's go back to our Vidcast screen. Here's a little one, if you've noticed, that I've prepared earlier, open Q&A for the team. So I'm going to click on this one. And we're going to go back to that good old share video button that we used before. First of all, we were just getting the link to send to our team, but now we're going to get this embed link, which is right here. So I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, and we'll go back over to Slido. So once we have that link, we go to our settings within this Slido. And on the left-hand side, we go down to integrations. You can see here that there's a live video integration, which I just need to toggle on from here. And then I can paste that embed code and save it. So we'll see what that looks like from the participant side in just a little minute. We also want to set up our Slido. So we want to get some feedback as well as running our continuous Q&A with the team. So we're going to stay on this live polls tab and set up a Slido survey. Of course, you can do just a single poll if you want, but the survey will let us add multiple polls into it and get some really good input from the team. So let's click on Create Survey, and you can all follow along. The first question will be a multiple choice which is what it is by default. And we're going to ask, how do you feel about this meeting experiment using async vidcast plus a Q&A session? And we'll give the people some options. Maybe they thought it was too long, too short, or some cheeky rascals didn't even watch the video at all. Let's add another question here by clicking this plus button, and we'll toggle this little menu so we can go for a rating poll. And we can just ask people, again, please rate this way of having an open Q&A, and let them pick out of 5 stars. And the final question that I want to put in here is a simple one, but an important one. We'll do an open text poll so people can give us a free answer, and we can write, feel free to leave any other feedback here. And we're going to save this. So it's sitting within our Slido, and I want to make sure I have it active for when people actually get the Slido link. So there we go. I'll make sure I hit the play button. It's active. It's ready to go. The last thing to consider is our audience Q&A. I hit that pretty quick, but hopefully you're following with me. It's the tab right over from the live polls with the audience Q&A. The only real thing to decide here is if we want our moderation on or off. I'm going to keep it off so that all the questions come in automatically and people can put in their questions anonymously or with their name. If you have the moderation turned on, it means that you as the Slido host can decide which questions are approved to go live that the team can see and which ones you want to dismiss and not show at all. So I'll leave that in your court to see what you decide to do. So it's all set up, it's ready to go. Let's then get the link for Slido, which is up here. We have another trusty share button on the top right, and we click on share link with participants. I'm actually going to pop this into this webinar chat window. If you want to have a look yourself, I am going to share it on my screen too, but you can have a first-hand look if you click on that link, and I will load this on my screen, and here we can see what it looks like. So this is our Slido, and look at that beautiful magic. There I am, a past version of me in a vidcast. Let's give it a little play. Hi all, welcome to our team Slido, where we can ask questions. Feel free to write a question anonymously, and I'll prepare my answers and record a new vidcast, which I'll post in here next week. So let me know how you like this way of working. I've got a Slido survey also running. Cheers. All right, thanks, Andrew. Over to me again, Andrew. So you can see here that the survey is running. It shows up as it's active. I can put in my votes. Love that guy. And send it. And we can go to the Q&A, which is right here, and I can type a question. So let me just ask, how can we make our work environment more inclusive for the remote team? I'm a remote worker, so I definitely care about this, and I'm not going to put my name in there. I'm going to remain anonymous and send the question. And there you have it. It looks pretty good, right? And you can go back as a host to see that your questions are coming in. You have the option to actually reply directly in Slido, or like I said, I was going to do in the vidcast, I'll prepare these answers and then make another vidcast video to share with the team. And you can see on the live polls section that the votes are coming in. You can use your analytics part to actually check and see what's going on in your Slido. So there you have it. That's our demo. And let's sum up the benefits of actually using Slido. It's a safe space for the team where they can ask their questions and they can ask them anonymously. That's a real benefit of Slido. For me as a host, I can take time to answer the questions and prepare them. And then I can, like I said, make that next video. You can even pop that in the same Slido for the next week. And good old inclusion that we've been talking about. Everyone who is across different time zones on the team has a say. And there's no meeting. There doesn't need to be. And finally, you're getting that feedback. You get direct input on how to improve in the future. So there we go. Adrian has a few things for you to keep in mind as we come to the close of our webinar. Thanks, folks.
Yeah, Andrew, those were really great. The reactions emojis just kind of went nuts when you showed that demo, and they were really fantastic tips. I hope that you folks were able to get an idea as to how important it could be to have fewer meetings, and that we gave you some tools to start running some asynchronous meetings or asynchronous video updates. And if you're thinking about making a change, or you have already made the change to your meeting culture and it's going a bit slower than you expected, here's a few things to keep in mind. Number one is communicating asynchronously won't be an instant change by any means, right? Learning how to communicate in an async environment is a new behavior, a muscle that needs to be trained. Using the right tools to work asynchronously is going to be super important. So whether that's Vidcast, there's some tools like Notion, Miro, Slack, Slido, of course, Google Drive. Choosing the right tech is going to be super important. Also, start small. Can't stress this one enough. Make one change, get some people's buy-in, get to critical mass, and then move on to another focus. And then the fourth one I'd say would be consistency and transparency, which are critical to building a culture of trust and reliability, and especially for employees. They want to be able to rely on their teammates and be responsive and contribute asynchronously. The consistency is going to be key. I have another takeaway slide here that I wanted to go over. It's a great reminder of kind of everything that we went over today. Number one, a meeting-free day or less meetings in general can have a positive effect on job satisfaction and productivity. Anna went over this in her part, if you remember. Also, number two, use the framework to determine which of your meetings can be held asynchronously. And that framework, if you remember, those were the factors that Andrew mentioned that you can use to determine whether a meeting would be a good candidate to be nixed or delivered asynchronously. And that was scheduling, interaction, connection, sensitivity, and urgency. Those were the five factors there. Number three, using a video messaging tool will allow you to create content that folks across different time zones. I know I enjoy watching, like I mentioned earlier, watching Andrew's vidcast because he's in Northern Ireland. I'm in Chicago. I can watch it when it's convenient for me or when I'm feeling productive and ready to kind of take in that content and be able to action it if I need to. And then finally, when participants have some skin in the game, it makes for better and more effective meetings. So using Slido to offer that interaction, offer that the ability to send in feedback asynchronously, anonymously, would be a great thing to take home today. So before I open it up to our Q&A, we are going to launch a feedback survey. We'd love to hear what everyone thought about our webinar today, so feel free to add that. But also, if you haven't gotten your questions in, please go ahead and hop over to the Q&A tab, get your answers in, or upvote some of the, get your questions in, or upvote some of the questions, and we'll take a look at some of those. So let's open that up. Cool. So the first one, what advantages has a Slido survey over Microsoft Forms or Google Forms? Andrew, do you want to take a stab at this one?
Perfect, yeah. Well, I hope that I highlighted some of these as I was doing my demo. When you're using Slido, you have that option to be anonymous, whether that's voting in a poll or asking a question. And it is truly anonymous if you select that. So I think that's something that's really great. I think that Slido also has more versatility and is a bit more dynamic. There are lots of different poll types, which I think that Microsoft Forms certainly doesn't have, and Google as well. So those are the things that come to mind for me. And of course, with the use case we looked at, you can embed the vidcast video or any kind of video in there. So yeah, it's pretty cool for that. I don't know, Adrian, if you have any other thoughts on that or.
I always love just the analytics and how much you can kind of dive into it and take away some of those insights. And yeah, just so I love our analytics, our reports, where you can actually drill down to even see how individual participants, if they chose to vote with their name, have voted, which is really great.
Nice.
Yeah, one thing I also did add in the reply, and thank you for the question, is just the general benefit of instantaneity. Slido works very well for live interactions, which is not something that other tools are built around. Not only do they work very well in your live interactions, Slido transitions very seamlessly from asynchronous communication or interactions, right? For example, asking for feedback or input before the meeting starts, right? And then taking that and moving it directly into your live conversations, again, is something that Slido does beautifully that the other tools just aren't built for. That being said, if you want to do a very robust feedback survey with like 50 questions and branching, Slido is not the tool for you, but that I don't think that is what the question was about.
Awesome. Yanka's asking how to change the culture that having meeting is a default for any discussion. So again, that kind of knee-jerk reaction, what are some of the changes And again, some of these already have some replies, some from us, some from other participants here. So yeah, I'd love to hear anyone's take. Anna, maybe you can take a stab at this one here.
Sure. Thank you, Adrian. So just quickly to reiterate what's been written in the replies, someone suggests to create a digital communication etiquette or guideline to let people in the organization know when it's appropriate to schedule a meeting and when it makes more sense to use, something else, Vidcast, Slido, Slack messages, whatever it is that you use. One thing I will also say is leading by example is great, especially when leaders lead by example, right? Sometimes creating change, or actually oftentimes creating change is scary, and having buy-in from leadership is really helpful to make that feel more comfortable. And again, and maybe if you're not an official leader, but you're seen as a leader by, just the energy that you have in your group, try it, right? I remember when I had a colleague send me a vidcast for the first time. It was the first time I received one, and I was like, whoa, this is very cool and very helpful. And I started doing it too. And then lastly, sharing the information we shared with you today, educating others around, we have a great slide that hopefully you all will get access to afterwards that said, here's when it's great to have an async meeting. Here's when it's not great. The guidelines are actually fairly quite simple, right? If you need interaction, communication, brainstorming, decision making, instantaneous feedback, maybe don't work asynchronously for that. Are you just giving an update? Do you just have something you want to share with someone, but you don't need their feedback immediately as you're, sharing it? Then yeah, just sharing those guidelines with people.
That's a good call. And yeah, Mario in the chat just added another one. It's also good to norm with your team on what is an asynchronous versus an asynchronous meeting. So yeah, creating those norms is really good. Another one from Yanka, really popular question here. How do you assure that people are watching your videos, participating in polls, etc.? There's a common practice in place that what is not in the calendar is not happening, right? If it's not in Outlook, it's not real. So what are some tips that and maybe if someone else is doing something really good, please add it to the chat as well. But how would you assure that people are participating and people are watching videos?
Sure. I mean, I can share a couple of things that are practical tips in terms of Slido and Vidcast. So Adrian already mentioned that with Slido, you have your analytics section here where you can see all the votes coming in and the questions, and you can kind of make sure that the votes are adding up to the people on your team and that everyone's taking part. And also with Vidcast, there is a way to view your insights. So this is a really cool feature that Vidcast has. Right beside the edit button here, you can go to insights. I don't expect much from this video that I created today, but once people start actually viewing the video, you can see who's viewed it. If they're in your organization, you can see the name of the person, and even more importantly, the viewer retention. So seeing how long they watched the video and how long it held their attention, because you obviously need them to take in all of the information, so you can actually see that in Vidcast. I don't know if anyone else has any further tips, but that's all for me. Got a smiley face.
I've gotten those emails too, like Andrew has watched your vidcast, which is really really good there. So that's specifically to vidcast. But yeah, I think it's just creating a culture of consistency and just encouragement and leading by example for sure. Awesome. What is an easy or efficient way to turn Slido results into action items or tasks in other tools? Andrew?
All right, this is a good one. I mean, in the use case that we looked at, we are taking those questions from Slido and preparing them and then putting them into the form of a vidcast where we can share the answers. In terms of other ways, I guess you could maybe have a Slido poll, and even if you are having a meeting, you could make that meeting more effective by letting your team members vote on what they want to cover in the meeting. So you could have a poll with maybe a multiple choice of different topics, or they could rank in order what is most important to them, and then you could actually change the agenda for that meeting to cater to that audience. So that's a cool thing you can do with Slido that we haven't really mentioned in this webinar. So yeah.
Very cool. This next one's really interesting. How can I create an event or series of questions and reuse it numerous times without combining the results from each sessions? I would want the results separate. So we kind of talked about this one. Yeah.
We did actually, Adrian. You had the good answer. I'll just share the screen. But Adrian,
yeah, if you want to share your screen.
that you would use multiple rooms in Slido. So I'll just quickly come into this event of Slido that we're already in. And under the settings here, on the first general part, there's the multiple rooms section. And yeah, Adrian, if you want to talk a little bit about that, what it does with one of those rooms.
Yeah, one of the things that you can do is add an additional room. And what this allows you to do is create almost like a sub session within like a Slido event, so that each room has their own Q&A, each room has their own polls. And what you would then do is take the polls from the first room and duplicate them into the other multiple rooms. And then when you're having your different sessions, you can even name them like by date. But here Andrew's showing us how to duplicate that poll, how to easily copy and paste it over into the other rooms. And then that way, when you're running your second or third session, it's the same event, same QR code, same event code, but folks who vote in those polls, those answers get sorted out into those individual rooms. So that would be, Michelle, a great way of doing that with leveraging our multiple rooms.
Yeah, and you can name these rooms whatever you want. You could even put the date of the day if that would help you. You can turn off every room but the one that you're using on that date to avoid any confusion. So pretty nifty feature that you can use for that for sure.
Okay, we've got a question from David. Does the Slido plugin in Cisco WebEx work on Microsoft Teams? Anna, I know that you replied in Slido, but do you want to go over just for everyone who maybe hasn't looked at that reply?
Yes, absolutely. So David, we do have an integration with Microsoft Teams. It is currently available and functioning very well. In fact, we've made some really wonderful adjustments that hopefully make the experience even more seamless and intuitive to use. I have shared the link in the reply to find more information about it on our website.
But it's a really great one. And I'll just add that these meeting tool integrations, like the one for WebEx and Microsoft Teams, makes for a really great participant experience because your folks don't have to leave the meeting tool to vote, to ask their questions. It's right there in a panel in their meeting environment. So
yeah, actually also what's really unique to the Microsoft Teams integration is that not only do you have access to the entire Slido admin experience the way you would in a browser within your Teams application, you can also add it to a chat, to a one-on-one conversation, to a group, and then you can also add it into your meeting. So you can really do it all without ever leaving Teams, which is really great.
Awesome. Another one from David. It's a good one. Can I embed any web page and show the video, or does it have to be vidcast? Great question. Andrew, do you want to take us through this one?
Sure thing. Let's go back over to Slido. I'm well prepared, as you can see. So when we go to our integrations section and to the live video, you can see here that the supported partners are YouTube, Facebook Live, Vimeo, and Vidcast. So typically, yeah, any of those video streaming services you can embed, especially if you know how to get this iframe code. It should work pretty well. If we're talking about websites and web pages, you can actually embed Slido into a web page as well if you want to do that. So you can find that on our help center and our community pages on slido.com to find more information. But yeah, lots of options there for embedding.
That is a great segue. I'm going to jump down just a little bit. If you'll scroll down, there's a question from Dominic where he says, any plans to make this work the other way, i.e. embed Slido into Vidcast? I want to direct my users to Vidcast. Thank you for highlighting that. Any roadmap to be able to timestamp, automate polls that tie in with the video playback? And Andrew, or folks, we've got another panelist here. You may have noticed our colleague Jacob. Either one of you want to take a crack at this one?
There he is.
I'm happy to take that question. Hi, everybody.
Thanks so much.
So there is a plan to actually make Slido embedded, vidcast in Slido directly. But it will be coming relatively soon, hopefully. So that way you can just log into your account within Vidcast and add a poll. It would not yet be linked to the timestamps. That's something more long-term that we're considering. It's definitely on our radar. It's not committed on the roadmap, but certainly something that we want to do in the future.
Awesome. That's really exciting. So you'd go to your Vidcast page and see the poll right in Vidcast versus the other way around. Really, really great. And the cool thing is that a lot of the reactions that people have to your Vidcast video are timestamped on the little timeline, and as are the comments, as we saw in in Andrew's demo where Carly, our other colleague, had commented something. So really great question here.
I want to take
We'll
a look
go
at this
back.
latest question coming up because
Yeah.
I think this is great and something that we actually have done in Slido. So would it be okay to do a vidcast with a few Slido questions leading up to a meeting? And then you can facilitate better discussion for when you do meet. So yeah, normally handled via email. Well, this is great. Joe, our lead of success teams at Slido, actually did this. So she prepared a vidcast, put it into a Slido event, and let people ask their questions in the Slido Q&A. And then we had a meeting. There were actually 2 meetings at the end of that week in different time zones to accommodate people from all over. And yeah, it was like a live answering of the questions. You could ask more questions if you wanted to, and really just address those issues. So I think that's amazing. Even if you're not totally getting rid of the meetings, you can still use Slido to make that upcoming meeting even better.
Yeah, crowdsourcing some topics, some ideas, pre-meeting is super important. Okay, if my colleagues are camera shy, how do I sell them on the idea of recording short videos instead of holding meetings? Andrew, Anna, any thoughts?
Well, I was going to say that is a great question. And one great thing about Vidcast is that you do not have to have your video on to record it,
Yeah,
which is
that's
great.
true.
You don't have to do that. That being said, if you would choose that route, I would at least recommend sharing something, whether it be a presentation, a browser window, an application that you're maybe using to demonstrate something. But staring at a black screen, I mean, you may as well send a voice memo at that point, which is also an option, right, for asynchronous communication. But yeah, you don't
Sure.
have to turn your camera on to share these kinds of updates.
Right. And I would just add to
Yeah.
that, maybe like leading by example. If you are the team lead or you're someone enthusiastic in the team that wants to get this happening, lead by example and make those vidcasts yourself, and that could help from the top down, you know? So I think we can take maybe one more question, Adrian. What do you think?
Yeah, we can take it. Yeah, we'll take one more question. And this question here, let's take a look here. Yeah, we'll take the next one. Do you have artificial intelligence tools to analyze the open text answers? Andrew, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe some analytics, some sentiment stuff? Maybe not exactly this, but some of the stuff that we got.
Right. Not exactly this. We don't have AI to do that, but we do have within our Slido analytics our sentiment. So let me just see if I can find it on this one. So I think this is specific to our questions. So what it does with the Q&A is it takes those questions and it analyzes it, whether it's positive, neutral, or negative. So that's kind of the closest thing that we have in terms of the open text polls. We don't analyze them in that way, but thanks for this input. Maybe it's something we can look into in the future.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, so folks, before you leave, we do have that feedback survey active. You can fill that out for us in the polls tab. We have a couple of upcoming events here at Slido. We'd love to see you there, and you can find more information or register for both at slido.com/webinars. And I know that our very own Anna is going to be presenting at Anna's at both of these.
I'll be you, Adrian, for the Slido product event. I'll be moderating, and I will be attending the Slido Elevate and potentially presenting in other ways, but I can't share the details yet.
Okay, that's awesome. So, folks, hopefully you got a lot out of this. Hopefully it was time well spent. I know I really enjoyed our time together today. So I wanted just to say thank you for joining, and that we will send everything out after this. But appreciate you all's time today, and don't forget to fill out that feedback survey. So have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone. And there was a little question on how you can find Vidcast, and I popped that link into the chat.
Oh,
so it's vidcast.io, and you can sign up for free and try it out. So there you go. Thanks, everyone.